Hey y'all, how's it going? Today we'll be taking a look at the first supersonic jet fighter available in the Russian tech tree, this being the MiG-19 PT. So let's dive in and see what the farmer has to offer. Development of the MiG-19 began on July 30th, 1950, when Stalin ordered the development of a fighter with greatly improved range over that of the MiG-17 and MiG-15 then in service. So the MiG Bureau designers would get to work designing the new plane. Initially, two prototypes were built. SM-1 tested the power plant, while SM-2 tested new aerodynamic features. The successful features from both of these prototypes were then merged together into the prototype that was designated SM-9/1. This was the first true MiG-19 prototype. SM-9/1 would make its maiden flight on January 5th, 1953, with Grigory Sedov at the controls. During initial testing, the prototype demonstrated a top speed of Mach 1.33. In September of that year, factory testing completed and the prototype was submitted for state testing. The VVS was very impressed with SM-9/1 as it had a much higher top speed and higher ceiling than the MiG-17F. By February 1954, state testing was completed and the plane was assigned its in-service designation MiG-19. The first production MiG-19s would begin rolling off the production lines in March 1955. These initial MiG-19s suffered from major handling problems that stemmed from its use of a fixed horizontal stabilizer with an elevator attached on the end. The designers at the MiG Bureau didn't know of this fault and had already been working to solve it. The next variant, the MiG-19S, would use an all-moving tail to solve these handling problems. Two prototypes were built with the new tail, one featuring 23mm cannons and the latter featuring 30mm cannons. Flight testing began in September 1954 and finished up by May 1955. The MiG-19S was put into production in August of 1955. The MiG-19S would be the first MiG-19 exported to other nations and was the most produced variant, with around 70% of all MiG-19s produced being an S variant. The last major variant of the MiG-19, the MiG-19P, began development on August 15, 1953. This version was a dedicated all-weather interceptor, so the nose of the aircraft had to be redesigned to house the twin-antenna RP-1 Izmarid-1 air intercept radar that would later be replaced by the RP-5 Izmarid-2. A lip was added on the top of the intake to house the search radar, while the tracking radar was placed in a radome located in the center of the intake. The nose was also lengthened to accommodate the new radar equipment, and the center-mounted 30mm cannon was removed because of weight penalties. A limitation of 3.5 G was imposed on the aircraft due to radar reliability and operability concerns stemming from the primitive vacuum tube technology used in the radar. Since the MiG-19P was overall heavier than the MiG-19S, it had reduced performance characteristics. There were three prototypes built: SM-71, SM-72, and SM-73. State testing of the MiG-19P began in late 1954, but it was very slow going thanks to problems that kept arising that would need to be solved before testing could continue. It wasn't until late 1955 that testing finally completed, with production having begun earlier that year. In service, the radar was considered very unreliable and severely affected the MiG-19P's all-weather operational capability. In the mid-1960s, the MiG-19P would receive an armament upgrade when it was made missile-capable with the addition of two R-3S IR missiles. The SM-72 was the original testbed for this addition and was redesignated to the MiG-19 PT, the plane that we see in-game. In-game, the MiG-19 PT is equipped with the RP-5 Izmarid-2 radar. It's a very basic radar set, only having one search setting of 120 degrees by 30 degrees with a range of 7 miles. You can only lock a target that's within 2 miles of you and directly off your nose with this radar. And that's about it for it. Though interestingly enough, the MiG-19 PT is the only plane in-game capable of trackball scan. This means that the radar can keep searching for targets while maintaining a lock. The PT accomplishes this by using a separate search and track radar, so it's kinda cheating in that regard. While this is a neat little trick, in actual games the radar won't see much use thanks to its short range and lack of radar-guided missiles. It can be helpful in sim, but that's about it. Moving on to weapons, let's start off with the air-to-ground ordnance. The MiG-19 PT gets access to 250 kilogram dumb bombs, 100 kilogram dumb bombs, and S-5K rocket pods. You can only carry 2 bombs at a time, or up to 4 8-round rocket pods. The bombs aren't very large, and the S-5Ks are pretty terrible rockets thanks to its measly warhead that can only pin 150 millimeters of armor. With so few weapons and no ballistics computer, you're better off just imagining the MiG-19 PT doesn't have access to any bombs or rockets. For air-to-air weapons, the MiG-19 PT gets access to 2 R3Ss at rank 2. This is a Russian reverse-engineered AIM-9B, so it's a 10G IR missile with a cage seeker head and a practical max range of 1.2 miles. The missile is best used against slow maneuvering or unaware targets. While you can get kills with these missiles, you only have 2 of them, so they won't be your primary weapon. Instead, your primary weapon is going to be your 2 NR30 30mm cannons mounted in the wing roots. Each cannon comes with 70 rounds of ammo, and with a fire rate of 1,000 rounds per minute, you're looking at a trigger time of 4.2 seconds. These guns only need a round or 2 to land to put a plane down, and that's thanks to the high explosive fragmentation rounds. These rounds pack a mean punch, and I suggest bringing the air target belts so you get as many of these rounds as possible. With the low ammo count, it's a good idea to keep your burst short so your ammo will last as long as possible. That means you're going to need some pretty good aim to make those bursts count. And these guns do take some time to learn, but that's more down to the limitations of the plane than the guns themselves. The stock grind isn't anything special in the MiG-19 PT. You don't have any good ground ordnance options, so just focus on going for players and AI attackers. Modification-wise, focus on performance mods, and then upon reaching rank 2, grab the R3S mod. Then go for the G-suit, as you'll black out a lot without it. After that, you can either go research the gun modifications or the rest of the performance modifications before getting the ground ordnance mods. At the heart of the MiG-19 PT's performance are 2 Mikulin RD-9B turbojet engines, each capable of producing 3,210 kilograms of force and afterburner and 2,550 kilograms of force dry. These 2 engines are able to push the PT past Mach 1 in level flight with a little bit of altitude. On the deck, the PT will struggle to go supersonic unless you come out of a dive. If you do come out of a dive, be sure not to exceed 680 knots if you don't want your wings to come off. When on the deck, the PT can quickly accelerate up to Mach 0.9, but it'll then hit a brick wall that it just can't pass. The PT also has excellent energy retention in a turn. This, combined with good turning at around 400 knots, makes it a decent rate fighter. Though that's about the end of the good parts of its performance. As you get into the 350 knot range and lower, the MiG will struggle to turn. No matter what speed you're at, your roll rate in the PT is pretty pitiful. This terrible roll rate makes defensive rolling very hard, and I would avoid getting into any kind of rolling scissor fight. That's not even the worst part though. The rudder on the MiG-19 PT is non-existent. The bad roll rate and the rudder can make it really hard to get your NR30s onto target at times. One last thing I want to mention is that the engines do take a pretty long time to spool up, so the engine will take a second or 2 to regain power if you're very erratic with your throttle inputs. When it comes to playing the MiG-19 PT, you're in a pretty good spot. Being at 9.7, you're going to see mostly down tiers, and the up tiers you do see won't be higher than 10.3 for the most part, so you're going to get some pretty good matchmaking. Whether you're up tiered or down tiered won't actually change how you play. The MiG-19 PT is on the slower end of supersonic jets, so you won't be running down Mach 2 or even some Mach 1 capable jets unless you catch them on low energy. Despite not being faster than most other supersonic jets, you have better energy retention than most of them and good acceleration on top of that, so you're very capable of energy trapping your opponents. What I typically like to do is to take off and climb to between 10 and 15,000 feet so I have some altitude to exchange for speed, so that I can catch supersonic jets that are on the deck. Typically, these will be F-105s. These can be a real pain to catch if you leave them till late game, so if I can, I like to kill them early on. Otherwise, I pick a target below me and try to sneak up behind him for a missile shot. If he doesn't notice me, hey, free kill. If he does dodge the missile, no biggie, I'll just keep my speed up and extend away. As usual, you want to avoid dogfighting early on. Work with your teammates so you can get the numbers advantage, and then when you do get into a dogfight later on in the game, you don't have to worry about being third-partied. That should wrap things up, so let's go over the pros and cons before ending with my final verdict. The MiG-19 PT has good energy retention. The heavy swept wings won't bleed as much speed in a turn compared to a delta wing, so you can easily outrate your opponents that have them. Once you reach around 400 to 450 knots, the MiG-19 will turn really well. This turning ability will allow you to work your way into a firing position for either your R3Ss or your pair of NR30s. After getting into position, your NR30s will make quick work of any plane you shoot them at. These guns pack a mean punch that hits like a truck. Moving over to the cons, what can really make aiming these guns difficult is the fact that the rudder is absolute garbage. This can really make small adjustments in your aim very difficult. The poor roll rate also doesn't help. The roll rate is just really sluggish and makes it difficult to get your guns on target when the enemy is rolling all over the place. As a 9.7, it is possible to run into opponents with 30G missiles, and it is very difficult to dodge them without countermeasures. You kinda have to hope the missile is poorly aimed, and even then, you have to perfectly time your maneuvers to dodge the missile. For my final verdict, I'm going to say the MiG-19 PT is a solid plane for its BR. That is, once you master it. The poor roll rate and rudder authority make adjusting to quick changes very difficult. You have to predict what your target is going to do so you can position yourself ahead of time for the shot. This is going to require some skill and time to get used to the plane's behavior. Once you do, you should have a great time flying it. Have any of y'all tried the MiG-19 PT? If so, what are your thoughts on the plane? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.